So, the question now is, what now? What's next? The first season of X-Men is over. What am I going to do? I guess I can move on, find the new TV show, go out, get an actual life. Or we're going to do what we do best and speculate. This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show will discuss any and all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
We've already discussed our first impressions of X-Men 97. We've given our season 1 breakdown and kind of a mini review. So I figure we'll wrap it up with a nice little bow by doing speculations and theories of season 2.
Yeah.
I think we'll get the most likely out of the way first. And I think they're setting up the Rise of Apocalypse storyline.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty
Age
much...
of Apocalypse?
Well, they have the Rise of Apocalypse like miniseries.
From the Egypt.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they're also setting up Kang the Conqueror with that to some degree.
It looks like that. And they might be doing something that can help the MCU.
Yeah.
By, I don't know, showing that Kang can be more easily defeated in other media so that when they want to push him to the side in mainline MCU, it will be more palatable. Or they might want to full on go with a different version and keep showing more and more different iterations of him so that when they do switch to a different actor playing Kang, that will be more palatable. So either way, I think this is going to be used as something that will help them.
Yeah. But, I mean, just given the way the first season ended, I think that is the most likely.
Yeah, Apocalypse in all timelines being, like the future is, what was it, 29 or was it into the year 3000?
Might have been 3000.
Yeah, it was pretty far.
Yeah.
And obviously dystopia. But it didn't show Apocalypse there, and I do not remember these comics well. But I think that Apocalypse is a dominating force in that.
But,
obviously, they always show that with Cable in all of his future timelines. Apocalypse is something that needs to be destroyed.
Because wasn't that like one of the storylines of the original is they had to destroy Apocalypse in like every part of the timeline or else he could keep coming back?
Yeah, they had to destroy his Lazarus chamber.
Yeah.
Like in the past, so he didn't have it in the future. Yeah, which if Apocalypse gets a hold of time travel, then he could just go back and rebuild it or keep going back to they had to destroy it at like its inception, I guess. I don't remember that one well, although that one was that 4-parter.
Yeah.
That was originally intended to be the end of the whole series.
Yeah, and I also think my Gambit theory of being death is also going to prove to be accurate.
Yeah, that's...
Just from that.
I think that's for sure.
Because, we get the, in the past, Apocalypse, not yet in power, so definitely Rise of Apocalypse. Then just that scene from Genosha, maybe setting up Age of Apocalypse.
See, I don't... I've heard some people say Age of Apocalypse, and I don't actually think that they're going to do alternate timelines. If they do any, which there's a bunch, they do that a lot in the comics for X-Men, specifically quite a lot. If they do, I think that they're going to do... I mean, it didn't have a lot of lasting ramifications. When things reverted back, Legion existed. It started by, and they did a version in One Man's Worth in the original run, which tied into this. Legion decides to go back into the past and kill Magneto before he becomes Magneto, but he accidentally kills his own dad, creating Paradox and the Age of Apocalypse storyline. What we pretty much got out of that was Blink, a fan favorite character that they rolled into. I think she's in the mainline 616 storyline now, I think. If not, maybe just Exiles, but she was such a fan favorite, they did keep her to some degree. And then Morph, which his look in that and in other comics is what they're going for in this current version, his true form. So if they do an alternate timeline, I really think it would be House of M. I don't see them setting that up in any way, but House of M had like long-lasting...
Yeah. Well, since you brought that up and talking about the MCU, I've seen people speculating that could be how they bring the X-Men into...
Like a reverse House of M?
Like House of M has already happened. And Wanda has already taken their powers. And then they get restored in the MCU, and that's how the mutants are there now.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
Because after House of M, that, they come out of it, while they're still in essentially an alternate timeline, or alternate universe or whatever it becomes, Wanda says no more mutants, and then it was like 99% of the mutant population was depowered. This is for those of you who don't know. And we were left with like 198 mutants that still had powers. And they holed up. They all like came to the mansion. Good guys and bad guys. Everyone was... And not everyone got depowered like equally. Like the Blob lost all of his girth, but he was left with all of his skin. So he wasn't... Yeah, it was horrific looking. And like Quicksilver lost his powers, and he had this really up storyline where he tried to like get his powers back by going to the Inhumans and stealing some of like the Terrigen mist crystals and like stuck them in his chest. It was all kinds of messed up. And I don't remember how Magneto got his powers back, but he did lose his powers for a while. Comic book stuff, I guess. That's one thing that I know. It's like I always say Magneto is my favorite character, and no, I don't know every single detail of every single story he's ever been in, because after 2000, it's a lot. Pre-2000, there's not that many. It's like they used him kind of sparingly, all things considered, for, 30 years, give or take. But after the year 2000, he's almost just been a main character. When he's dropped off at times, they bring him right back. So yeah, I think that they might do a version of that. That might be season 3. I don't really see them doing a full-on Age of Apocalypse. They might allude to something like that, where some of the time travel characters Bishop knows about it. He's seen things from other realities, other timelines, so. And obviously, Cable might have seen different timelines, too. They haven't really alluded to that as much. Or his son, that he's apparently abandoned. His name's Tyler.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about him.
Yeah, so did Cable. Although, he's, like, Bastion created, like, his ultimate digivolution through taking Cable's like techno-virus infected arm and incorporating it into himself, which has his time travel device, which is why I imagine they were scattered. Yeah. So where's Bastion? Because we didn't see him.
Yeah, because he was not killed.
No.
Or at least not shown to be killed.
Right, and time traveled the whole asteroid, which we don't see the asteroid either. So is it just gone and only the few characters remain? The one thing that they did in this was like they were killing off villains from like early on, like stuff that had been in the first few episodes, with the Sentinels. There was Trask, Gyrich, both of those guys. Well, I guess Trask was whatever. What were those Sentinels called? I can't remember what the human Sentinels were called. But he became one of those, so he could potentially be still alive and possibly brought back. If not, he's just stuck like that. It was just permanently altered. Gyrich dead. Bastion killed him. They finally defeated Sinister. Like, I forgot how many times Sinister was actually in the original series and is always just like scurrying away, or like they think they beat him, but he obviously wasn't.
I mean, he could still come back too. They took away most of his stuff, but he wasn't dead.
No, not at all. He ran away. I believe it was Mason from the Weekly Planet said it was like a high school girl with a pimple that looked in a mirror. So that was actually like what's the worst kind of defeat you can imagine? Just getting humiliated by Morph. Anyway, so I think they're going to have to build Bastion back up. Now, did they get through to him? Is he going to be a neutral character or a good guy? They're in uncharted territory yet again with this, because they did something completely different with him than they did in the comics.
Do you think they're also setting up the New Mutants to some degree?
Yeah. I think that could be a spinoff. I think they're thinking about a spinoff.
This could set that up, because with the main roster mostly scattered, with the exception of Wolverine.
Well, Wolverine, Storm, and Morph are unaccounted for.
I think it showed Morph and Wolverine back with Forge.
Did it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I think they were on the ground, because I know Morph transformed into Jean, and he says, she can't say it, but I can. You gotta live.
Yeah. I love you.
Yeah, I love you. Yeah. I always thought they were back.
I think they were still on the Blackbird.
I have to go back and watch that.
Yeah, I might even zoom through my phone and check on that by the end of the episode, because that is one of the points that I was going to make is Gambit and Wolverine have both been death. Have they both been? Okay. So I think that, and also, like, Morph has been a bad guy in the past because Sinister's messed with him. I think Wolverine, Storm, Morph, and Gambit are going to be the Four Horsemen.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, that's my, I'm throwing that out there, and I haven't heard anybody else say, I don't think all four of them. Obviously, Gambit is going to be death.
Yeah.
That one's going to look
So I know Forge, in that one scene when Bishop comes back, has the board up with the mutants he's looking for.
Yeah, like,
and I'm trying to remember who all he had marked on the board.
Off-world and missing,
presumed dead.
Yeah, was all of the X-Men that we see, or that were on the asteroid.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say about you mentioning the New Mutants is the headmaster of the school when the New Mutants were the New Mutants through like the early to mid to late 80s. It was like a really long run. Was Magneto. And Roberto was always shown not liking that. He kept mentioning stuff about Magneto. Like, they were still doing that thing where they pretend this is all Magneto's fault. Because he's a really good scapegoat. If Magneto's good at he's like better at being a scapegoat than he is being the master of magnetism. When they're like, those Sentinels were Magneto's fault. All of this is Magneto's fault. Why did you put him in charge of the school? Obviously, this wouldn't have happened with the Sentinels and them trying to kill us constantly. None of that was happening before you put Magneto in charge. No, actually, Bastion, and this was the setup, like, not set up, but this was something that was going to happen from a long, from a different timeline bleeding over. So, yeah, not Magneto's fault, but Magneto was the headmaster of the school, and Roberto kept talking, like he does this 180 when Magneto gives his speech and is like, how many more of you are going to die before you realize I'm right? Everybody else does. And then Roberto's like, yeah, I've had enough. And he goes with him. So there's still that connection there that Roberto sees both sides and would more likely follow him and convince others to, especially if they do more of a reformation on Magneto during this X-Men, what we'll call X-Men 98, because calling it season 2 is like calling this season's the Doctor Who season 1. I'm like, Russell, you sold your soul to the devil.
But yeah, I didn't know if that was, or like Roberto's costume at the end, if that was just like an Easter egg or a setup.
Yeah, because that is his
New Mutants costume.
Yeah, and it was distinctly different from Forge's X-Men uniform that they had in the late 80s, which even like at some point, like even Jubilee wore it, Wolverine wore it, Gambit wore it at some point, even Storm, I think. So it was like there was certain runs where certain artists put all of the X-Men that were on the team at the time in that same blue and yellow outfit. The New Mutants were slightly different, and to distinguish the two, they did make the blue a little darker and the shoulders a little...
Wasn't the blue like almost design. Black?
Yeah, like kind of like how they would do Venom in the 90s. They would show like blue or purple highlights to show definition or whatever, whereas it's intended to be black, but that would look bad on screen. I'm not saying what they did do looked good. I'm just saying Jack Skellington has pinstripes for a reason. So, what else? I think that they're going to do... It's going to be like that second season where they had that B-plot through the whole second season of the original run where the Professor and Magneto are trapped on the Savage Land and they're just trying to get somewhere or figure out what's going on, and they don't have their powers and they kind of reconnect, and that was meant to soften Magneto into more of either an anti-hero or neutral character so that they could do more, like storylines in the future with him where you wouldn't view him as a straight-up villain. You would view him as more of a complicated character. And because I think that's what they're going to do with this. I think they're going to have them trapped there. Him and the Professor will have to work together again. And Rogue's there. So there's more. Don't know what's going to happen with that. They're probably going to make peace with it. They're not right for each other or whatever.
Yeah, I think she realized that once Gambit was killed. I think it's just going to be like a closure to that.
Yeah, I agree. And then who's there? It was
Like in the past?
Rogue, Nightcrawler, Magneto, the Professor, and Beast.
Yeah. Then in the future, we have Cyclops and Jean.
Yeah, which they straight up gave their names, which I was like, I didn't think that they would do that because they went by, in the comics when that happened, they went by aliases. I think it was like Red and Slim or something.
The nicknames Wolverine would have gave them?
Yeah. Weird. I'm wondering if that will alter the past in real time, because Cable talked about how in those rebel leaders really pissed him off because he should have been there with the X-Men. That should have been him fighting alongside them, whereas it was kind of, he didn't tell them it was definitely you guys, but it was also alluded to that maybe he didn't know it was them. So I'm wondering if they're going to play that he couldn't tell them their own future, that you're going to end up in the year 3000 whatever, and you're going to be,
or if they're going to try and alter it.
Yeah, because then if that's the case, it's they'll have to reveal that to him, and then will they, because now it's this is hard science fiction time travel story stuff, whereas they have done that in the past too, but it's more so you go into the past to make sure everything stays the same, and it stays the same. You go into the future to try and they never really did that. That people came from the future, and then timelines did change, though. There was that one where it's Wolverine was in the future with them, and then Bishop goes back, and it's Wolverine's skeletons in a Bacta tank. So,
isn't that one of the things they've always kind of shown with the X-Men? It's they don't fix anything. They just create branching timelines.
Yes, I think that's the thing. So there's Morph down at the bottom, and that's
okay.
Missing Presumed Dead, and then also Storm, and I don't see Wolverine on there. And I'm sure in a wider shot it does show him, but I don't see that. So he's got to be on there. So yeah, down at the bottom corner next to Iceman, it's also got the thing over his face. So I think that they were still on the Blackbird, and it just didn't show what happened to them at the end. So with some of them in the past, some of them in the future, well, to just Jean and Scott, might some of them have stayed in the present and been taken by Apocalypse. I think there's going to be, I think we're not going to see them for a bit, but are they going to bypass Wolverine not having his adamantium skeleton and have Apocalypse give it right back to him? Which is how he got it back in the comics, but there were several years, I think, where he just didn't have it, and he was animalistic and just bone claws.
Or that could be some kind of middle ground. We see the one group in the past, one group in the future, then somewhere in between, but not the current present where Forge is. Mm-hmm. This is where the rest of them are.
Maybe back in the 50s again, during the One Man's Worth era, or...
I would say we see one is the rise of Apocalypse, when he's first coming to power. Then we got the present where everything's going on, maybe the formation of the New Mutants. Mm-hmm. Then we got the future where everything has really just kind of gone to shit. Then Wolverine and that group will be in the middle in the fight with whatever Apocalypse has formed up that way. And maybe there is where we see Gambit come back as Death.
I really wish they would add more. 10 was good, but I wish they would add more episodes. Especially if they're going to be doing... They could count the spinoff as within it. You know, there's some episodes of some shows like the Doom Patrol. I just watched an episode of the Doom Patrol from the last season, the final season rather, that the Doom Patrol is not in, except for Dorothy. So it's the Space Case one with the comic book girl. And it's this could be its own spin-off. It wouldn't be good, I'm just saying. They could do that. Have the spin-offs within the show, and have this show be, how you have to read multiple titles to get the whole story.
Yeah.
We're continuing this story in a different thing. Have it be run parallel. It's 1 week, you never know what you're going to get. Is it the New Mutants this week? But if they do that, will they use the same music? Because, can we talk about did I talk about the music in... I don't know that we did. And if I did, I didn't spend enough time on it. This music is the Newton Brothers, I think it was who it's attributed to. amazing through the whole show, but also the new theme is the same as the old theme. It's just
Yeah, I went back and watched an episode of the original theme song of that. Still great. Then I went back and rewatched one of the episodes from the new one, and it just hits harder.
especially they have a different intro. For the intro, it's like the Marvel Animation, and the Marvel Animation music has two different versions. There's like one where it goes hard, and then it's almost like it adds into it. It has this like electronic drum beat that goes just before the X-Men intro hits, and then there's like a slower version that's like a slow drum beat, almost like a heartbeat that lets you know this episode's gonna make you cry. Both are good, but the one that goes hard is...
I think that's one of the things, that added drum intro.
Yeah.
It kind of builds you up before it kicks into it.
Which the X-Men intro alone is enough, but that extra bit was so awesome. Which the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, did they add something in? And then I was like, no, I had to separate it to see, like, it is that other thing, and I didn't realize it until they had it without it. I'm going to start making other TV intros, like the MASH intro with the X-Men music, and the Golden Girls intro with the X-Men music. You tell me those aren't better. So, yeah, I would watch a New Mutants. Of course, it would be awesome if they had Magneto back in the present for that, to be their headmaster, but they didn't start like that. And also, I think that Moira McTaggart was a main character for the New Mutants a lot. She was one of their people that Legion was an antagonist, to be sure. Like, aspects of him, at least, were a problem for him. David Haller, the character Legion, is not a villain. The personality... Imagine if any of you have seen Legion, you would say, like, well, yeah, he is a villain in that, and it's just him. Yeah, in the comics, he started out as just autistic. And I know, I need a reason to bring that up in every episode. Here it is in the X-Men. You want representation? We got them all in the X-Men. That's what he was. It wasn't particularly well written or understood. They just made him mildly, handicapped, like mentally handicapped.
Are we talking the show, comic, or both?
The original. The original comic. In the show, he was paranoid schizophrenic, I believe, with like multiple personality disorder, which also written well but not depicted accurately, like as far as like real world. Moon Knight did an excellent job of showing what it's like to have that real affliction, and then show a comic book, stylized version of it. The TV show of Legion was completely like bonkers and surrealistic, and very most of it was just esoteric and surreal, and wasn't. If it made sense to anybody, it was Noah Hawley, and that was it. You can glean meaning from a lot of it, but I don't know if it's really there, especially once they get closer to the end with like they'll just throw in. Like, all of a sudden, guys with TVs for heads come out of a hole and you have to fight them. Why? Who knows? Where'd they come from? No one knows. What's their purpose? I mean, it's like two reality warpers are at war with each other, so... And then at some point, the good guys decide to just pretend the guy who wanted to destroy the world is okay, and we're going to work with him. Because the other guy had sex with his girlfriend, and that was bad somehow. Yes, I did say that, like, there's... I know what they intended for that, for it to feel like the R word, but if you have an argument with somebody and they forget about the argument, or if you had a way to just like wipe that away from their memory, like you having an argument like that, I don't think that that's necessarily the other thing. Maybe I'm the villain here. Maybe I'm the psychopath. This was also in Buffy. They did this in Buffy with a character that did not get accused of the R word, and that was Willow. Willow wiped Tara's memory of an argument they had. Wasn't accused of the R word. Wasn't even their intention behind that. But they show it very specifically and like pointedly. R word wasn't David's intent. If he wanted to do that, he would have just done that. They had an argument, and the quickest and easiest way to be done with an argument, if you can do something like this, is to make somebody forget. And that's what he did. Then they just happened to show them doing a special act afterward. And then everyone was like, oh my god, he R-worded her. So that's what happened in Legion. I think that was... And then he was a villain. after that because they said he was, and it wasn't as good after that. I don't know where they were going with it. Also, did everyone forget what the Shadow King did? I wish they would do this storyline in not that storyline, not that I was just talking about for way too long. But I wish they would do Legion, and if they do the New Mutants, I really hope they do.
No, but saying that did remind me that another thing I was thinking was with them being in Egypt, that we could see the Shadow King come back in some capacity.
Yeah. That's totally...
Whether it's a huge plot point or like an episode or two.
I forgot they did do an episode with the Shadow King, but it was just completely like separate from the comics in most ways. It was like it had nothing to do with what they generally did with him, I think. Maybe it was like based on one issue or something that were like, was it Storm goes back to Africa and she has a son there and
it's her
Shadow King
godson.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that always felt like that, and Proteus, I felt were these like really cool, larger than life, you know, like more than Omega level powered threats, but kind of ill-defined as to what their abilities are and like what can and can't they do and what do you have to do to defeat them. So I wanted to see that done better. I think they did do Proteus in the comics. They did some pretty cool stuff with him. I would like to see them fix Legion. A lot of people, if you've seen Legion, a lot of people love it. If you haven't seen it and you see a preview of it, you're like, it looks cool, but I don't know if it's for me, is what I hear. Like, nobody watched it, but the people who did loved it, so I recommend it even still. Sometimes it's a hard watch. It's extremely Lynchian. That's you know, there's no other way. It's surreal, it's esoteric, it's weird. If you like those things, check it out. A lot of the aspects that they were going for in Legion, I feel, were better written and portrayed with Jane in Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
So, anyway, there was a lot of missed opportunities in there. And they did a lot in more recent years to, like, fix Legion's character. There's things that I disagree with and that I wish they'd done a little bit better. It wasn't perfect for me, but he was able to have, like, a real relationship with a girl. It was, like, Manny Pixic Dream Girl who's blind. And it's complicated, but best storyline for Legion was in, I want to say the late, like just before 2010 or around that time, and it was like Magneto and Rogue were like two of the main X-Men in that run. It had great artwork. I think it was the Utopia storyline where they were on or near Utopia, and I think it's Dr. Nemesis builds him this watch that would allow him to cycle through. They've cataloged all the personalities and powers in his mind, and I think that's when they discovered that his real mutant ability is to spawn new personalities with new abilities, because it's not infinite, but it's like new ones kept appearing in his mind, and he could cycle through them on this watch and manifest their powers without letting their personality take control of his body.
What year did this happen?
I want to say it was like mid-2000s.
Because I'm trying to figure out who ripped off who, because that sounds a lot like Ben 10.
It was probably them that ripped off Ben 10, because Ben 10 was 90s, wasn't it? Or early 2000s? No?
It was 2000s.
Okay. I never watched Ben 10, but now that you mention, I know surface level about it, and I don't know if I ever made that connection before.
Yeah. Little side story. I had this watch I had in high school. It's one of those that's like meant to hold up to beatings. And one of my friends called it my Ben 10 watch, and she gave me so much shit over it.
Well.
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
It needs a new battery, but yeah, I got it somewhere.
Okay. Oh, I think it was later than I thought. I think it was like 2013.
Oh, yeah. Then they definitely ripped off Ben 10. Or was inspired by.
Yeah, so I would actually really like to see that happen, because I think anytime they brought him back, it made for a great villain. Originally, he had 3 personalities, or technically 4 if you count his own personality, because they kept changing this character. They have to keep making him more and more powerful to make everything he's ever done make sense. But Gabriel Haller, who the professor I don't think knew he had a son, they were separated, and you know, this is oftentimes how they do these things in the comics and in fiction. So it's not to make your hero protagonist look like a total deadbeat dad or whatever, which these things can happen. They were attacked by terrorists, like in their home, and David, as a toddler, I think, he like killed them and absorbed their minds into his body. Into his mind. So there were like, or maybe that was just one of them. I don't have all this right in front of me, but there were 3, and each one of them, the main one was Jack Wayne. So that was really the main villain. Whenever Legion was a real bad guy, an honest to goodness bad guy, it was Jack Wayne. And that didn't last for very long, and like he only had a few appearances in the 80s, and then at some point when they brought him back, they just added, like, in his mind, it was dozens if not hundreds of other personalities, and they would get wacky with it, make them either monstrous or goofy or whatever. So he got his own run that ran for quite a while, and I think that was 2018. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was. It seems like it was much longer ago than that.
It's because that was the before 4 times.
Yeah, it does. And that, I just didn't like what they did with his hair. And like, put a shirt on. You're not in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, what are you doing? Anyway, yeah, X-Men Legacy number 250 when it was X-Men Legacy. I love the art in that, and that not dissimilar from some of the lineup we have most recently in the comics. Yeah. There's Gambit, Magneto, Rogue, Professor X, Legion, and I wish I could remember that woman's name. She is probably not going to be in these. So yeah, it was around that time, and that year was, I don't know. So yeah, 2011. So it was a little bit before then. So yeah, Ben 10 did it first, I imagine. But it works. If it's a thing that works and it works for a pastiche thing, this is something that, you know, like Legion they'd set this up for a long time. I can't think of a better thing to rip off than that. Yeah. To like fix his character and let him be a useful member of the team, which they never wrote him as a superhero. And that's the best part. That's what makes him the most relatable, is because he's maybe one of the most powerful, and he does not view himself as a hero or a superhero or anything of the type. He's just a guy that has incredible mental problems, but he does want to help. So he will when he can, and most of that's probably just trying to fit in.
Yeah. I think with them introducing time travel off the bat, kind of gives them a lot of wiggle room to retcon a lot of the incontinuities from the original series. Mm-hmm. And didn't they do like a short Legion run in that one?
I don't think they did.
Or am I mistaken?
I don't think they did. There was the Shadow King, but I don't think they had David Haller in the X-Men 92.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I would, if you can find it, I will.
I've watched some of the episodes recently, but it's been a while since I've watched the entire series.
Now, there was something that I wanted to discuss with you, like on air, off air, whatever, and you cut this out if you want, you can leave it in if you want, because I'm indifferent. I don't really care. But a lot of people, but like the character is canonically, well, actually the character in canon now might be bi, but Morph is, at least I'm going to assume bi. I think they're saying he's non-binary, so which is like to say that him or Mystique would be non-binary would totally make sense in a universe like this, where they are literally one or the other and could feel comfortable in either or gender. So, and I think it's been revealed that he really is in love with Wolverine. I thought that maybe they were just going to portray them as best friends, like real bros that just, you know, even to get their aggression out or get out of some depression or something, they tussle a bit sometimes. But is that going to be a storyline they play out where Wolverine has to, you know, like has this unrequited love for Wolverine, or how will they play that? Or will it be more ambiguous? It wouldn't necessarily be a gay relationship. But would he ask more? This opens up a lot of tense questions in society. Like, nobody exists like this. No real life non-binary person exists where they can literally shapeshift.
Yeah.
They can change their clothes and they can change their makeup, but they cannot literally change their body back and forth like it's that malleable day to day. You can have a surgery, but you can't do what Morph and Mystique can do, and arguably Apocalypse, but we haven't seen him do that in a while. So I don't know where that's going, but I can just, the thing that I dread the most isn't that they do it, but hearing about it on Instagram.
It's just
That's what I
everything.
hate that.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to the comments section, it's like, no woke X-Men for me. You're not even gonna watch it? You're gonna miss this awesome show because somebody told you it's super woke, or a gay guy was in charge, and you're like, not for me. Seriously. And like, there was one drawing where Rogue's ass isn't like popping, and you're like, it's woke now. How is that even woke? I don't even understand how that, a drawing of that, it breaks me. I don't understand this. These people on here every time, and then they'll say things on there that don't even make sense. I could list a dozen examples, but it's not even worth it, and they're not listening anyway, and I'm not changing any mind. So that's what I dread about it. But I really just don't know if the writers will push like this that far, or if the storyline is going to be for the uncomfortable conversation, for the unrequited love, and to show how difficult it would be to live being that different from mainline society. Like, it's hard enough just being gay and finding gay people. Even harder if you're this. Even harder if you're this. Even harder if you're this. Once you get down to being a more marginalized minority in society, finding, and then like you find somebody, you really fall in love with them, finally, and they love you like a friend. And that's it. And that's all it's ever going to be. We've had plenty of stories like that with regular, I don't mean to say regular, but like heterosexual cis characters for decades.
So, you get that with Wolverine and Jean.
Yeah. We've had that with that. And will this be an extension of that? Will it be, because like Wolverine isn't the kind of person who is in a monogamous relationship, and not because he cheats. It's the same reason Magneto can't be in a relationship. He's seen too much horror in his life. You can't have a good relationship. A lot of people come back from war. It changes them, and they need a lot of counseling. I don't know if they have a regular therapist on staff at the mansion. The professor was shown putting in his due diligence with Sabretooth, but and they even allude to that he's worked with Wolverine like that, to say like he used to be worse when he first came there. Now he's better. So I don't know.
In other X-Men media, they've shown that the professor has done that for Wolverine.
Yeah.
But my perspective on that is, do it, don't do it, I don't care. But if they are going to write that story, then they need to just write the story and don't just have it in there to have it in there. Because that's what gets me about all of this. Because it's more just like checking boxes than it is to actually have the characters.
It makes sense to have Morph be represented in this way. If they were going to do it with any one character.
If absolutely.
They came in and said, like, Storm's non-binary now. It's like, well, I don't guess. And if they said, like, they're really leaning on, like, if they, like, they had so many physical cues. Like, I've seen so many people just assume the professor is gay, from how he acts, how they actually literally draw him like acting in the show. And I can see it. I mean, I'm not blind. And that one could make sense. Or bi, I guess, is the case would be. Everybody wants to just say gay, and it's like, he's literally had like children and women, relationships with women. So showing some of these stories, I think, could be important if they do it right. And they're not just doing it to say, like, Wolverine's gay now. If they show how difficult something, like they did with Magneto and Rogue, it's like the reason they didn't, it shows him like kind of having night terrors. So it alludes to a lot more. Kind of a weird way to do that, but obviously, like, he was a Holocaust survivor that could never move past it. And being a freedom fighter and fighting for the cause of his people and preventing another Holocaust became his life. And that's what had been moving toward is what they showed. And through Rogue, they showed like she wanted to have a relationship with him, but it just wasn't possible. So I would also like to see Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch have another reunion with him, see how that goes. I don't know. But also they had Lorna Dane on that boat in his mind. If you've seen this, you know. There was a boat in his mind. His kids were on it. Except for the kid that died, that I think that's not in this universe. So, yeah, I agree with you. If it's written well, because I don't really, I'm indifferent about certain things. Certain characters, I don't mind them evolving or adding certain traits to. Everybody is somebody's favorite character.
Yeah.
And I don't know who is the person out there who Morph is their favorite character, but I hope that they make him more like a better fighter in the next one, because he got his ass beat in every fight got in, no matter who he got. Turned into the Juggernaut, and those Sentinels tossed him into the next room. They not just tossed him around the room, but they threw him into the library. So yeah, be awesome if they could make him like more adept in what he's doing. Which if he becomes one of the Horsemen, which then he might go like full on hardcore dark with that, because I don't know. I wonder about this theory, if they're gonna do this at all, because 2 of the members that are missing, and I don't know if Storm has ever been associated with Apocalypse like that.
Not that I can think of.
I can't either. But again, I don't know every single story ever, so.
But I think that's the end of my speculations.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more other than we kind of did a wish list.
Yeah.
And actual speculation mixed together, I think. And I think maybe for just a little cherry on the top, season 3, House of M.
Possibly. So, yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. Let us know what you think in the comments. Where's this heading? Do you think we're right? Do you think we'll see a New Mutant spinoff? Do you think Morph will become a better fighter? Let us know. But if you've made it with us this far, thank you. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave links in the description below. If you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. It's a small click for you. It means a lot for us. And until next time, see ya.